Luxembourg Intelligence News Weekly. Welcome to this deep dive into the Luxembourg financial and legal scene, specifically for the week of May 13th, 2025.
Hello. Yes, quite a busy week to cover.
Absolutely. We've sifted through a lot of information, legal updates, regulatory shifts, economic pointers, all pretty vital for you if you're in law, finance, corporate governance, or compliance here in Luxembourg.
The goal really is to pull out the crucial bits, make sense of the, let's say, trickier parts, and make it concrete, save you some time, keep you informed.
Exactly. We'll try to cover the who, what, when, where, why, and how of what's been happening, and crucially, what it means for your documents, amendments needed, policies to update.
Right, because it's often those practical implications that matter most day to day.
Okay, let's get into it. What jumps out straight away is just the sheer amount of regulatory stuff happening.
It really does. The Luxembourg Intelligence News Weekly flagged quite a few deadlines coming up fast. It feels like the pace isn't letting up.
No kidding. Key themes seem to be, well, DORA, again, getting that operationalized, MiCA 2. Then there's this heightened AML and CFT focus, especially on unregulated AIFs.
And don't forget the new corporate law stuff on cross-border deals, plus the usual drumbeat on tax transparency.
Let's dive into those deadlines first. DORA bore the Digital Operational Resilience Act. Big one.
Yep. So for all financial entities under DORA,
Most of them.
pretty much, the deadline for getting your DORA Register of Information sorted, specifically the bit about ICT third-party contracts, that's been pushed back.
Okay, new date.
May 31st, 2025, and it's got to go through the CSSF e-desk portal. Remember to submit or resubmit if you had corrections.
Any reason given for the extension? Complexity?
The official reason isn't spelled out, but yeah, you'd guess it's because getting those details right is proving challenging for some firms, mapping everything accurately.
Makes sense. And the CSSF put out guidance on common errors, didn't they?
They did, which is helpful. It shows they want good data, not just tick boxes. So the how is really about following that guidance closely. Use the extra time wisely.
Good advice. Okay, next up. AML-CFT for unregulated AIFs. This seems like a step up in scrutiny.
It definitely is. We're talking all unregulated Luxembourg AIFs now, including RAFs, of course.
So what's required?
Two things mainly. First, the AIF AML questionnaire, that's the Excel file where you detail your MLTF risk assessment. And second, the annual RC report from your responsible to control your AML compliance officer, essentially.
Detailing their activities for the year.
Exactly. For the year ending 2024, the deadline for both is June 30th, 2025.
And where do these go?
Email them to the AED, that's the Administration de l'Enregistrement des Domaines et de la TVA. The specific address is aed.finevehicles@n.etat.lu. This is a direct mandate from the AED expanding the reporting. So you really need to make sure your internal assessments are robust and your RC has everything documented for that report.
Right. Document amendments needed there too, I imagine. Internal policies, risk assessment procedures.
Absolutely. And maybe checking service provider agreements if they help with this.
Okay. Moving on. Auditors have a new job related to tax. Public CBCR.
Yes. Country-by-country reporting, the public version. This affects the reviseurs d'entreprise agréés, the approved auditors, and the large companies or groups subject to these rules.
So what do the auditors have to do?
For financial years starting on or after June 22, 2024, they need to state in their audit report whether the company actually fell under the public CBCR rules for that year.
Okay.
And crucially, whether the company actually published the required income tax information report.
So a verification step. Where does this come from?
It's from the law of August 15th, 2023, which brought the EU directive into Luxembourg law. The CSSF confirmed the practicalities in a communication on May 12th this year, 2025.
Got it. So auditors need to update their report templates, maybe engagement letters too, and the companies themselves need to prepare and publish that CBCR report if they're in scope.
Precisely. More documentation work.
Always. Yeah. Okay, let's shift gears slightly. ESG ratings. ESMA is looking into this.
Yes, the European Securities and Markets Authority. They've launched a consultation on draft technical standards for ESG rating providers.
Who should be paying attention to this?
Well, the providers themselves, obviously, but also financial firms that use those ratings, the companies being rated.
Fund managers, maybe?
Potentially, yeah. If they rely heavily on these ratings for their strategies or disclosures, the consultation covers things like authorization for providers, conflicts of interest, what they need to disclose.
Deadline for comments.
June 20th, 2025. It's all about building a more regulated, consistent framework for ESG ratings across the EU.
Okay, something to watch. What about accessibility? There's a new law kicking in soon.
That's right. The law on accessibility of products and services. Deadline is June 28th, 2025.
And this applies to?
Businesses providing certain products and services to the public. Think ATMs, e-banking sites, e-commerce platforms, things people interact with regularly.
The goal being better access for people with disabilities.
Exactly. It's about inclusion. The how involves companies adapting their products and services to meet the new standards laid out in the law.
Important deadline, then.
Yeah.
Now, AIFMD2, the Alternative Investment Fund Managers Directive Update, transposition is underway.
It is. The deadline for Luxembourg to get it into national law is April 16th, 2026 at the latest.
And who does this mainly affect?
AIFMs and AIFs, particularly those doing loan origination, that's a big focus of AIFMD2.
Any leeway for existing funds?
Yes, there's a grandfathering clause for existing loan originating AIFs. They have until April 16th, 2029 to comply fully, but new funds or changes to AIFMs will need to consider the new rules sooner.
So keep an eye on the draft law as it progresses through Parliament.
Definitely. Document updates will be needed for sure. Prospectuses, policies.
Right, and instant payments. That regulation is now law here.
Yes, EU Regulation 2024-886 was implemented by a Luxembourg law on April 4th, 2025.
What's the core requirement for payment service providers, PSPs?
If you offer standard credit transfers in euro, you must also offer instant payments. Plus, you need to provide an IBAN name verification service, that confirmation of pay idea.
To help fight fraud.
Exactly. It's phased in, but most rules bite by April 2026. It's a big push to make instant the new normal for euro payments.
So PSPs need system upgrades, process changes.
Significant ones, yes. And update terms and conditions, client communication, another round of documentation work.
Seems to be a theme. Lastly, for this section, the EU Directive on Digital Tools in Company Law.
Yes. This one's a bit further out transposition, likely early 2027. But it affects everyone, companies, lawyers, notaries.
What's the aim?
More digitalization. Think online company formation, better connection between business registers across the EU, that's BRII, and the once-only principle, so you don't have to submit the same info multiple times.
Sounds helpful, especially for cross-border stuff and SMEs.
That's the idea. More trust, transparency, easier operations. Luxembourg will need to pass national laws to make it happen. Long-term documentation impact there.
Okay, let's broaden out. The general market environment. The Prime Minister gave the State of the Nation address.
He did on May 13th. Key messages were around boosting purchasing power, economic performance, citing StateX's 2.5% growth forecast for 2024, and the housing market picking up a bit.
And the bit about cutting red tape.
Yes, a big emphasis on administrative simplification, reducing unnecessary bureaucracy. Also pledged support for industry decarbonization with a pragmatic energy policy, and confirmed support for the Mercosur trade deal.
Interesting mix. What about StateX's own forecasts?
They came out May 7th. Inflation projected at 1.9% for this year, 2025, and next. April's actual figure was 1.7%.
And indexation.
We just had one triggered in April, effective May 1st, a 2.5% salary increase. The next one isn't projected until Q3 2026 currently.
But StateX also mentions some clouds on the horizon.
Yeah, their conjuncture flash noted some turbulence in international finance, potential headwinds from U.S. interest rates, consumer confidence maybe wavering a bit. So the domestic picture looks okay, but external factors need watching.
Always the case. And technology trends. The CSSF getting into AI.
Think so. They've announced a strategic agreement with Clarence, that's a sovereign cloud provider, to pilot using AI in their internal processes. Expected Q1 2025.
The regulator using AI. That's significant.
It is. Alongside DORA pushing hard on ICT risk management and MICA formalizing crypto regulation, it shows how central tech is becoming to the whole financial sector.
Definitely. Okay, let's drill down into the investment fund sector specifically. Any regulatory updates there?
A few things. The CSSF reported global UCI net assets were down slightly at the end of March 2025 compared to February, just under 5.75 trillion euros.
Normal fluctuation, perhaps.
Could be. Also, CSSF Circular 25877 adopted the 2024 ESMA guidelines on stress testing for money market funds. So MMF managers will need to check their documentation and procedures align.
We mentioned AIFMD2 transposition deadline, April 16th, 2026, and the grandfathering for loan funds until 2029. Updates needed for new funds there. What about securitization?
Right. An amended circular on outsourcing CSSF 22886, updated by 25883. It now clarifies how outsourcing rules apply under DORA.
How so?
It applies to business process outsourcing for entities covered by DORA, but applies fully to non-DORA entities and non-DORA mancos. Interestingly, they've removed specific clauses just about cloud outsourcing.
Okay, so review outsourcing agreements and policies if you're in securitization or affected by these changes.
And at the EU level, we already mentioned the ESMA consultation on ESG rating providers, due June 20th. That could impact how funds use ratings.
And those other ESMA guidelines, crypto solicitation.
Yes, guidelines on qualifying crypto assets as financial instruments, on third-country firms soliciting business in the EU, and reverse solicitation under MiCA. These are referenced in CSSF Circulars 25886 and 25887.
Potential impact on fund investment policies, disclosures.
Especially if funds deal with crypto or market across borders. Yes, worth checking.
Let's switch to corporate law and governance. The Mobility Directive transposition sounds like a big one.
It really is. The laws came out in Feb and March 2025, effective April 1st for draft terms published since then.
What kind of operations does it cover?
Cross-border transformations, mergers, and divisions, but only for specific company types, SAs, SARLs, and SCAs.
And the key changes are?
Quite a few. Mandatory anti-abuse checks by notaries, better protection for minority shareholders, think exit rights, ability to challenge the share exchange ratio.
Creditors, too?
Yep, stronger safeguards, they can apply for guarantees, and employee rights are significantly boosted.
How so?
More rights to information and consultation, participation rights extended to conversions and divisions if thresholds are met, a longer safeguard period, 4 years, and specific employee reports needed.
Wow, that sounds like a major overhaul for cross-border deals. Huge documentation impact.
Massive. Draft terms, board reports, notary deeds, articles, meeting docs, employee comms, all need careful review and amendment.
And then there's that other EU directive on digital tools coming down the track, likely early 2027 transposition.
Right. Directive 2025-25, aiming for more digital processes, BRIC-wise integration, the once-only principle, longer-term impact on formation docs, filings, etc.
We also touched on the auditor's role in public CBCR disclosure verification, needing that statement in the audit report for years starting June 22, 2024. So updates to audit reports and engagement letters.
And companies need to produce that report.
Anything else recent on the statute book?
Quick rundown. Law of May 7th approved the protocol amending the LuxCheck DTT. Grand Ducal Reg of April 30th modified the CBCR rules. Bill 8538 to approve the Luxembourg DTT was deposited May 8th.
We mentioned the instant payments law from April 4th.
Yes. Also a law from March 25th, likely linked to the Mobility Directive, and the law from Feb 6 designating CSSF as the MiCA authority and bringing in the travel rule.
Keeping track is key. Okay, compliant focus. AML-CFT again, and DORA implementation.
Let's start with AML-CFT. The big news is the AED expanding reporting to all unregulated AIFs, announced back in February.
Deadline June 30th for the 2024 AML questionnaire and RC report, sent via email.
Correct. This means updating internal policies, risk assessments, how the RC reports, data collection for the questionnaire, maybe checking service provider contracts.
And the CSSF has been active too.
Yes, they held an AML-CFT conference for investment firms in March. The slides are available, apparently. Plus, new circulars adopting EBA guidelines.
Which ones?
Circular 25878 on MLTF risk factors, 25879 on the travel rule for fund crypto transfers, and they updated the list of high-risk third countries in Annex to 23822 back in Feb.
So more potential tweaks needed for AML policies, CDD, transaction monitoring, risk models.
It's a constant process. Now, DORA implementation. The CSSF dropped a load of circulars on April 9th.
Okay, break them down for us.
25880 deals with PSPs and ICT risk assessment, transposing an EBA guideline. 25881 amends the older ICT Circular 2750, mainly for entities not under DORA.
Got it.
25882 sets out requirements for DORA entities using ICT third parties, including specific reporting. And 25883 amends the outsourcing Circular 228-6, clarifying scope under DORA as we discussed for securitization.
And the DORA register deadline extension to May 31st with guidance on errors. Remember, DORA overrides older circulars where they overlap.
Crucial point. The documentation impact here is huge. ICT risk frameworks, incident plans, testing policies, third-party contracts and policies, the register itself, DCPDR plans, governance docs.
A massive undertaking for firms. And MiCA implementation.
Also very busy. CSSF issued a batch of circulars end of April 25885 through 890. These implement various EBA and ESMA guidelines.
Have rank one.
templates for supervising RTMT compliance, qualifying crypto as financial instruments, third country solicitation and reverse solicitation, rules for crypto transfer services, security standards for non-RTMT crypto, joint guidelines on assessment templates. This is comprehensive.
And this followed earlier circulars in April.
Yes, 25875 on suitability of management shareholders for art issuers and CASPs, and 25876 on redemption plans for art towns.
Plus the February law making CSSF the MICA authority and implementing the travel rule. CSPs have been under MICA since end of 2024.
With the transition for existing VASPs until July 1st, 2026. Again, the documentation amendments are substantial for anyone in the crypto space, CASPs issuers.
Covering client agreements, risk disclosures, custody, complaints, conflicts, security, PCP, capital, white papers, marketing, governance, everything really.
It's a whole new regulatory world for crypto.
Okay, shifting to banking law and financial services providers. CSSF priorities for 2025.
They flagged credit risk, especially mortgages, corporate loans, property construction, ICT and cyber risk, obviously linked to DORA, operational risk compliance, Basel III, ESG, and sanctions compliance, including U.S. sanctions.
No surprises there. We cover the instant payments regulation, already mandatory instant payments, and IBAN check for PSPs offering euro transfers, law from April 4th, bulk compliance by April 2026, document changes needed.
Yes, and the EBA updated its technical standards, the ITS, on resolution planning reporting on May 7th.
Aiming for
Harmonization, less duplication, lower costs, a modular approach. A new ITS will replace the old one, full package, expected Q4 2025. Will impact internal data gathering and reporting systems.
countercyclical buffer rate.
Still 0.50% for Q2 2025.
And any notable court cases.
There was an Advocate General's opinion in an ECJ case, C60222P, ABLV Bank versus the SRB, touching on the SRB's discretion not to resolve a bank if it's not in the public interest. Interesting point on resolution frameworks.
Okay. Finally, let's quickly cover tax law updates relevant for non-specialists.
The Grand Ducal Regulation of April 30th modified the 2018 CBCR rules. Might mean technical updates for reporting, so check internal processes and software.
We mentioned the auditor's new role, verifying public CBCR publication.
Right. Lots happening on the tax treaty front, too. Oman DTT bill introduced, Czech DTT protocol approved, French DTT protocol effective March 4th, Argentina DTT protocol approved for ratification, Moldova DTT amendment ratified, Colombia DTT approved for ratification.
Busy. Multinationals and investors need to keep track for planning. Potential document impact there, too.
Absolutely. Other bits. The ACD Tax Authority put the 2024 income tax return on myguichet.lu from April 7th. They ran a communication campaign. And the filing deadline for pre-filled returns was April 7th. Just awareness points for taxpayers.
And at the EU level.
Commission consulting on capital markets union integration, public consultation on potential EU responses to U.S. tariffs, open till June 10th, and they're assessing Russia's economy under sanctions. Broader context for Luxembourg's international environment.
Okay. That wraps up our detailed look at the Luxembourg financial and legal news for the week of May 13th, 2025, based on the Luxembourg Intelligence News Weekly.
We've covered a lot. Regulatory changes, deadlines, economic news.
Hopefully pulling out the key things for you as a professional here. Think about those DORA reporting changes, the wider AML net for AIFs, the big shifts from the Mobility Directive. Just a few things needing attention.
What stands out to you listening? What questions does this raise for your specific work?
Yeah, this is the overview. We always recommend digging into the official sources, CSSF, AED, the memorial for the real nitty-gritty that applies to you.
Absolutely. The level of detail there is essential.
So, a final thought perhaps.
Yeah.
With everything changing so fast, especially digital finance, governance, staying on top of it, being ready to adapt.
It's not optional anymore, is it? It's fundamental to succeeding here. What's really striking is how interconnected it all is. DORA affects outsourcing, which links to risk management, which touches AML.
You need that holistic view.
Exactly.
Luxembourg Intelligence News. Remember to hit subscribe and like if you found this useful. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.